Hey everybody, it's Comic Crack, and I'm back with a video. I picked up a few things lately. I don't know if I want to show them all to you. I wanted to focus on one area in particular, and that's on my 10 comics I'd like to pick up this year, as to try to focus the collection a little bit and kind of get some of these issues that I've been missing for a little while. One of the things I had on that list was Underground Comix, and I've got a few over the past 5 days or so, and then I got a stack today, which I'll tell you that story in a minute. Last week I was down kind of the south end of town. My son had a track and field day with his school that I went to just watch and spend some time there with him at. Afterwards, on my way home, it's near this bookstore, Cover to Cover. And I know from searching through the bins before that they had an issue of Slow Death from Last Gasp that I wanted to pick up at some point. Last time when I was in there, I had already had a stack of, I think that was the time I was picking up all the 2000 AD books. So I left it there knowing that it would probably last for a little while. I figured on my way home I'd check it out and grab it up. So I found two books actually. They have in his bins down underneath the shelving, as I've told you, there's various indie and small press. There's one box where it has Underground Comix. There was only like 3 or 4 issues in there. There was 2 more issues of Slow Death that I already own, so I left those behind and picked up Slow Death number 4. There's a website that I've used. Now, that said, I don't know how up to date it is. It's called I think it's called Sir Reel's Comics. I'll leave a link in the description box. And I've used that before. It's kind of a very basic, kind of great site just to get some information about some of the Underground Comics. He has information like how many issues were produced, how many printings there were. Again, I've found a couple of things with the amount of printings that were mistaken. Even in Castle Red Skull, Spiro and I were having a conversation, and he had a printing of a Underground comic that didn't appear on the website. So I don't know how up to date it is, if it's a site that he keeps maintaining. On the flip side, there is now a Underground Comix price guide, which I have a couple of mixed feelings about. I mean, mainly I'm fairly excited about it. I think it's a great thing. I don't own it yet. It's a book that I'm going to pick up in the near future, hopefully. One of the things that I like about searching for Underground Comix, sorry, I'll show you this one too. The other one is this Fantagore number 3. It's Richard Corbin. It's also Last Gasp, but it did kind of lead into his own publishing of Fantagore Press, I think, as well. So that's the other one I picked up from Cover to Cover. The thing I like about hunting for Underground Comix especially, or some of these small press things, nobody really knows how to price them. I don't know how many people are buying them up. I think there's a small group of people who still actively collect Undergrounds. And I know in my experience going to some of these stores, there was a guy recently, for example, I think it was at the thrift store, that had said that he did have a collection of Underground comics, but somebody came in and bought them all. And I've heard that throughout the years at various times, that I think when they do appear, somebody who's really into them just ends up buying the whole stack, doubles, duplicates or not, because you just don't come across them that much. When you do find them, or when I have found them, they're relatively cheap. So with now a price guide in place, I sort of worry that that's going to really change the landscape of Underground Comix. It might change it in a couple of different ways. Things will actually be priced now, as opposed to, because sometimes I've had luck where I've found things in like dollar bins, or found them for a couple of dollars, and they're like second printings and things like that. I don't often come across first printings. That's something that is fairly rare to come across even here, in what seems like, by all accounts from talking to some people, a fairly good city for some more obscure titles and some more underground things. I've heard from a number of people when I show off some of the comics I find here, sort of kind of amazement, like we don't have stuff like that in our town. So I feel like we're a fairly good location for finding some of these things. The other thing that might happen is that now a lot of these might actually surface for sale now that people know how to price them. I went to Red River Bookshop yesterday, and behind the counter he's always had a short box filled with adult comics that I've looked at over the years. Every once in a while I'll ask him to take it off the shelf and I'll have a flip through and I'll buy a couple things from him. It's really hit and miss. Some of the things that are in there, they're not necessarily undergrounds, it's maybe just stuff that's dirty comics, you know, they're just adult comics. So lots of nudity and focusing on porn stars, that sort of thing. Stuff that, you know, I'm not opposed to, but I just don't collect personally. When I went in the other day, yesterday, he wouldn't let me look at them. He said, no, those aren't for sale. When I went to Book Fair today, where I found a whole stack of Underground Comix, I was having a conversation with the woman who I usually do when I'm there, the woman that's mostly working there when I go in, and she said, we've had these for a while, because I said I didn't know that you carried Underground Comix. She said, we've had them for a while, we just haven't known how to price them. So they've just been kind of sitting in our storage room, in our stock room, and we finally, now that this price guide has come out, we've been able to put prices on them, and then we've decided to sell them. So I have a feeling that some of these places, that might be what's happening. The places that do know a little bit about comics, and specifically undergrounds, knowing that they have something, they just don't know what. They just haven't put prices on them, and now that there's a price guide, hopefully that will cause them to at least put prices on these things and get them out on the floor. So you're either going to see a couple of different things. You might end up seeing a lot of comics all of a sudden where you hadn't seen them before. But the flip side is that now that they know how to price them, you might not get as many deals as you once were able to. And I think even that is a double-edged sword too, because there's so many printings of a lot of these undergrounds. When I was looking through this stack here, there's a comic that I have here, I think it's the Zap comics actually that I picked up, was like the 6th printing. So some of those titles that went into that many printings, you're probably going to a little more easily be able to find cheap ones that are later printings. What it's going to do though is those early printings, it's really going to shoot those prices through the roof. Not that they were ever dirt cheap to begin with, but I think now that there's a framework for pricing, I have a feeling it's going to shift that way. So if you are a person who's interested in this stuff, if you do see them for cheap, I would say snatch them up while you can, or maybe now keep your eyes out for them, or if you're friendly with some of your comic shop owners and you want to find stuff like this, maybe tell them that the price guide is out there, because maybe they're in the same boat. Maybe it's one of those things, they just don't know what to do with them, so they just hold on to them forever because they want to get a fair price for them, which is completely understandable. I totally understand that. So that's my hope anyway, and when we get to this other stuff in a sec, I'll talk to you a bit more about that. When I was looking at Red River Bookshop, I found a few comics. Maybe I'll show you this stack just because there was some really great things in it. I'll start with the undergrounds that I found. This is from 1992, and it's S. Clay Wilson, first issue of something called Kingdom of Evil that I've never heard of before. If you know S. Clay Wilson, the Checkered Demon and his pirates and all that, you know how dirty and filthy he can be. Because this is 1992, you may think that, well, maybe he's changed a bit. No, it's still as filthy and violent as you remember S. Clay Wilson being. That was a nice score. And then the other one that I found was Kurt's Comics for I think $4, and it's Harvey Kurtzman, who was championed in the underground, along with guys like Will Eisner, because they were publishing some of these underground guys. They were friendly with some of these underground artists, and a lot of these underground artists cited these guys as influences on wanting to get into comics, period. So that was a really great score. I've never seen this before. This is from Kitchen Sink. And then I saw it today at Book Fair, and I'll talk to you about that when I get there. The other things I got at Red River was I found another issue of this Nemo, the Classic Comics Library. This is issue number 10. I had a quick flip through this last night. There's some really great stuff in here that I'm looking forward to reading, especially looking forward to reading about this guy, The Forgotten Genius of Gustav Verbeek. Fantasy in the Comics, Upside Down Visions, Right Side Up Delights. A little article on him, and then reprinting a bunch of his comic strips as well. And they look really great stuff. So I'm looking forward to digging into that one. Prime Cuts from Fantagraphics. This is the only issue I've ever seen of this. Again, an anthology type book. That is issue number 6. I found issue number 17 of Star Reach, which is magazine sized, and it was cheap. He had a bunch of the Star Reach comics as well, but they were priced at about $15 a pop, which is a little, well, it's not a little, it's quite a bit more than I'm willing to pay. I do like Star Reach. It's not my favorite comic of all time. I do collect it, and it's this one especially. Star Reach is really one where it's hit and miss for me as far as an anthology. I read this one last night, and out of the 4 stories, one of them I really loved, and it was the final story called GZ15. About discovering this planet, and I think terraforming a planet. The planet ends up having consciousness. The main character scientist is a little bit of he's a mutant, he's mutated, and just his interactions with the Earth force that's discovered this planet. I really liked the story. I thought it was really well done. I liked it a lot. For $2, Tales of the Kung Fu Warriors. I just couldn't leave behind. I was talking to Dr. Monkeybot about this a little bit. This artist, Derek Gross, D-A-E-R-I-C-K, did some work for Marvel and DC, but he did a lot of work for Carnal Comics, which again is more pornographic in nature, focusing on stars of the adult film world and stuff. But his art style is incredible, and the interiors of this are really fantastic as well. The legs of these women are easily 2 times the size of their torsos, giving them these just crazy poses in the story when they're fighting. I mean, if you can see that there, her leg is up past her head, pinning her arm to the wall, and it's equally as bizarre inside. That was a really great find. I'm really glad I scored that sucker. And then in amongst the Star Reach was Imagine, issue number 3. I think I only have 1 or 2 other issues of this series as well, so that was a nice find. There's a color story in here by P. Craig Russell in the middle. It looks like it's just been kind of stapled inside as part of this issue. And then something that I've never heard of before, I did some research into it. European artist Herman, or I'm not really sure. Adventure Comics is the company. I've since discovered that Dark Horse reprinted a lot of his, or this series specifically, Jeremiah. But this is Jeremiah Birds of Prey, and from what I could find out, these were all presented in kind of 2-issue miniseries. So I only found issue 1 of Birds of Prey. But then I found both issues of A Fistful of Sand. There's issue 2 of A Fistful of Sand. I've also since found out that it was a TV series as well, and I think it just went 2 seasons. This is Jeremiah the Heirs. It only went 2 seasons. I'm currently downloading the first season to give it a try. And I think I saw J. Michael Straczynski's name attached to it as well. I could be mistaken about that. I'm pretty sure it was, though. So there you go. That's from Red River Comics. So when we went into book fair today, it was to buy bags and boards and look at some sci-fi novels. While I was there, though, we decided to kind of have a look. I don't often look at book fair. They have a lot of more expensive comics up on the wall that you can buy, from all sorts of, like, Marvel, DC, Dell, Gold Key, that sort of thing. And then they've also got a display case that's filled with stacks of books. In the display cases, mostly like your Daredevils and your X-Men and Avengers and that sort of thing. There's another section of the wall where it's comics that have been sold, but people are paying them off, because these are pretty high-grade books for a few $100s. They range everywhere from like $60, $75 to, I've seen books in there that are $500, $600. So we just walked around just to have a look. Once I saw Dell and Gold Key especially, I wanted to see if, if there was any chance that they'd have X the Man with X-ray eyes, which is also on my list for the top 10 comics to look for this year. So I was hoping to take that off my list. When I went into to look at the display case, it's all locked up. I saw they had some Dell and Gold Key, plus they had some Underground Comix, which I've never seen in there before. So I asked the guy that was working if he had a list of what was in, because I know it's a pain in the ass to unlock the case and take out the packs and stuff like that. I asked if there was just a written list of what's included in the display case. He said there's not. Which ones are you looking for? I said specifically Gold Key, Dell, and the Underground Comix. He's like, oh, well, we do have some more Underground Comix over here that we've just put out. And there was a stack now, an enormous stack, that I thought, okay, well, that can't be at all. Immediately as soon as I started flipping through it, I knew that it was a gold mine. The woman who I've dealt with before came in and I had a conversation with her and just kind of talking, which I've told you already. They just didn't know how, so they literally just put out these comics, I think yesterday is what she said. So I felt like I was the first person going through them. And it's one of those things, honestly, if I would have had the money, if I could afford it, I would have bought them all, every single one. They had a small handful of first printings of some of these, one of which I did buy. The rest are kind of second or third prints, or if they are first prints, they were ones that weren't very popular at the time. They weren't from any big companies. A lot of these are kitchen sink. I don't think there was any Last Gasp. There might have been, oh no, there's probably a couple of Last Gasp, but the majority are from kitchen sink and print mint, etc. So for the most part, they were priced very reasonably. A lot of these I bought were around the $2, $2.50 to kind of $3 or $3.50. There is one that I bought that's a first print that cost me $10. But I couldn't let it go. Yeah, and I just know that it's going to be one of those things, if I go back even tomorrow or in a week's time, I just have a feeling somebody's going to walk in and just buy them all, so I grabbed what I could. So let's have a look. I'm still in a little bit of shock. I can't believe it's been a long time since I've come across a collection of Undergrounds this large. So I just picked ones that looked interesting or that I've heard about, and then some that I've never heard about and never seen. So this is called Bonsai, and it's Kim Deitch, Roger H. Brand, and Joel Beck. It's in a bit of a rougher shape, but it was only $2.50. So there's that. Something called Barbarian Killer Funnies that I've never heard of, for $2 there. Not sure who put that out. I haven't looked through all of these yet. I've just started looking through a couple of them. One that I have heard about, and I'm really glad to finally find, it's called Bizarre Sex. This is number 3. There you go there. From the library recently, I took out a book on Underground Comix. that I would highly recommend. Again, if you follow me on Twitter, I did post about it. I have a history of Underground Comix by Des Skin. That's okay, there's nothing wrong with it. In this book that I just took out recently, I feel like in the essays that have been in that book, I know even more than I have through an entire book on the supposed history. Really great essays written by Trina Robbins. I think Jay Lynch does one as well too. And then of course Dennis Kitchen. Just fantastic from people who were around at the time working with the artists, who know about the distribution, who were a part of the distribution, reasons why they think the underground kind of had its peak really early on and completely disappeared. They cite it as they were really cracking down on head shops later on in the 70s, or in the mid 70s, and part of it was that the head shops were worried that because a lot of these comics had kind of smut in them, nudity and sex and things like that, that would be a way in for their shops to get busted. So a lot of the head shops stopped carrying them. They also didn't have a very good distribution network. It was kind of, if you wanted to sell the books, you bought the books and that was it, and you just held on to them forever. They didn't have a system set up, whereas every month there would be some comics. The ones that didn't sell, you rip the covers off, you send back, and then you get reimbursed for it. There was nothing like that set up. They were really dealt with more as books. They were pricier, and something that never really occurred to me, the comparison, I mean, it's obvious now that it was stated in the book, but at the time you're looking at Marvel comics that were kind of 12 to 15 cents. These were 50 cents a pop when they were coming out, which was a stretch, which was, I imagine, an expense. Matched that with the fact that you weren't finding them everywhere, you were just finding them in a few isolated spots. Gave them an added feel of that they were treated as artists and authors as opposed to somebody that was just pumping out a comic every week. You know, there was a lot of these comics that did have a run, but it wasn't something that you had to complete every month. So the last 3/4 of the book or so are photos of the original art of a lot of these comics from a lot of these artists, and it's in that alone is worth it for the book. You can see the original art, you can see where they've cut and pasted certain things, you can see where they've whited out certain areas, you can see some notes in some of the margins. Not all of them have it, but there's a number of them that do have. You're looking at a piece of history that, you know, is as exciting to me as it is seeing artist editions of a Jack Kirby book or other favorite artists from like the big two. Those are equally as interesting to me as this. Just a real window into how it was created at the time, how these books were prepared and created at the time, that I love. The reason I'm telling you this is because they have the original of this cover, and this is a second printing of Dope Comics #1, and it's done in kind of a Fleischer studio style, painted there. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully the glare isn't too bad, but so that was something I couldn't pass up, and that was $3.50. They also had Dope Comics #2, and this is a third printing. And then they had the pricier one. This is also one that I think I saw in the book. This is a first printing of Dope Comics #3. So there you go. Rand Holmes, or Randall Holmes, I think he was working out of Vancouver, possibly. He was one of the only, if not the only, Canadian that was contributing to the undergrounds like Zap Comics and things. And then he also had I think he had a publisher himself. The stamp art might be him, excuse me, but there wasn't that many Canadians that I found out. I'm sure that there was more, but he's the one name that, the one big name that I do know for sure. I'd like to find out actually how many Canadians were involved. So I picked this up, Fog City Comics #2, and you'll see on the corner stamp art is over top of a maple leaf, so which is why I think, and it's a Rand Holmes cover, which is why I'm under the belief that this was his comic publishing imprint out of I'm pretty sure it was Vancouver. So there you go, there's that one. I've never seen any of these before, so I couldn't pass that up. And then another book that he did through Kitchen Sink was Harold Head, which I have another issue of as well. This is Harold Head, Hitler's Cocaine. Looks like it was a two-parter, yeah, one of a two-part series. One that I've never heard of. This is called Snappy Fun with Hyper Comics, and I think this is #1. This is created by Baltimore's #1 underground cartoonist, Honest, and I think his name is Steve Stiles, if I'm reading that signature. Again, Kitchen Sink. Never heard of this, so that'll be great to dig into. Another one that I read about in the book, and I just had a look through these, and they're incredible. The art, the covers on these is incredible. This #3 looks like the cover is misprinted though, but the interior art, this is by a guy named Guy Colwell, and it's Inner City Romance, and this is Inner City Romance #3 and #4, and it's by Last Gasp. The interior art to this one is just amazing. #4, it looks like it was, I don't know if it was done a little faster or what it was. The interior art of #4 isn't as polished as this is. This is a fantastic book. And it's guys in prison, and it's just their thoughts, I guess. Hey everybody, sorry about that. The battery died, and just to kind of back up a little bit, we were talking about Inner City Romance #3 and 4. I think I had already said that it looks like there was a misprinting on this #3. He's a guy that I've heard about in this book, and in the back of Inner City Romance #4, there's a little bit of a write-up on him. I guess he did do time in prison as well for draft dodging, I think, and protesting. I don't know if he was serving time when these books came out. I don't think so, but I don't know. But these are, like, I love all the books that I've picked up today, but these are two real highlights for me. I'm really, really glad to have these. This one, again, if you see #3, don't hesitate for a second to pick it up. That art is phenomenal. Maybe I'll do a video where we look through some of these a little closer sometime. They had a couple of issues of this. I just picked up one of them, the cheaper one. This is Mickey Rat #3. Looks like it says a second printing there. And then this one is a title called Moondog. I don't know if it was a one-off. It has a 4 on the sticker that they've put on the bag and board. But yeah, so I don't know if that's issue 4, if it was just a one-off. There's that. I have a few Skull comics. Now I have another one. This is Skull #5, which was awesome to find. Love it. And to add to my Slow Death collection, I think I'm closing in on having the whole run now, which is really great. This is the 5th printing of issue #2. Again, I'm not so worried about, right now anyway, at this stage of my collecting the Undergrounds, I'm not so worried about which printing I get. It's more important just to have the comics. So that's fantastic. And then Slow Death #9, and I don't see, they didn't write down which printing this is, so maybe there was only one printing of this, I'm not really sure. And that's the other thing that would be great to see in this price guide. I'm assuming that they do have that information in that book as well, because when they changed printings for these Undergrounds, the price just went up from like 50 cents to 75 to $1 to $1.25, I think. This one is Women's Comics #7. that I think was Trina Robbins from the beginning. I think she was involved with putting this together throughout the whole series. I know that it went to a bunch of different publishers. This is one that Last Gasp put out with an amazing cover by Melinda. Oh, I'm not as familiar with a lot of these names in this stack, and this is not a person that I know, so I can't read what the last name is. I can't make it out. The 6th printing of Zap Comics number 3, and this is the special 69 issue. So half of the book is this way, and then you flip it over and the other half is the other way. And this originally came out in 1969. This particular printing, I'm not sure of the year, I don't think it says. And then finally, something that I've never heard of, again from Last Gasp and the Greenwood organization. This is something called Zero, and it's issue number 3. Again, $2. I couldn't keep it there. Couldn't leave it behind for $2. Holy shit, there you go. Like I said, I'm still a little shocked. I'm just a little, I don't know, I feel a little just out of it as far as I just can't believe that these were there today. Again, if I had the money, I would have bought every single one of them, whether I had them or not. And like I said, there's a lot that I left behind that was fantastic, but I mean, you can only buy so much, right? There was some that were kind of around the $5 to $10 range. I took a lot of the ones that were the cheapest. I pretty much didn't even think about it and just threw them on a pile, especially when I saw a $2 or $2.50 price tag. It seemed a shame to leave them there. So I'm gonna work my way through these eventually, and I'll do some videos. Maybe I'll do some videos where we look inside some of these books. There's gonna be a lot, I'm sure, that stand out, but I'll show you, I'll do a video where we look at Inner City Romance for sure, because you really should have a look at that book. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry about the horrible edit, and sorry about the rushed last half. I just charged the battery a little bit so I could finish off this video before Lillian wakes up from her nap. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll talk to you.